just really recently and has said, what if I just put us all on all the titles? I'm like,
Kody and Janelle were trying to.
Okay, so this whole Janelle situation has taken a turn I really don't think any person saw coming. Fans are calling her two-faced, and the backlash is getting louder by the day. The comments aren't subtle either. People just flat out say she's been playing both sides for years, and they're finally done giving her the benefit of the doubt. Hey friends, welcome back. Let's get into what happened, because the reaction has been wild, and the more you look at the patterns, the more this whole thing starts to make sense. It's not just this one moment that sets everybody off. It's like this slow build that finally clicked for the viewers, and now they're looking at Janelle in a way that feels different. So the theory right now is pretty simple. Janelle presents herself as calm and neutral. But behind the scenes, she's stirring things up a lot more than she's letting on. And fans are pointing out how she frequently tells one person she's got their back, then turns around and tells a whole different story to another person. It's almost like she wants peace without ever challenging the people who actually create the chaos, which ends up making everything even messier. The moment that broke the internet this week was when she tried positioning herself as the middle ground yet again. She made those comments about wanting healing, wanting unity, wanting everybody to move forward, which on its own sounds perfectly fine, but then viewers remembered those scenes from earlier seasons where she'd quietly co-sign Kody's behavior or brush off the damage he caused. And suddenly people realized how often she says she's neutral, while still helping him keep those same dynamics in place. That's where the two-faced accusation is coming from. Not because she's malicious, but because she has this habit of presenting herself as the reasonable one, while tiptoeing around Kody in a way that doesn't match what she says to the other women. And when fans put all of those moments together, side by side, the pattern became hard not to see. What really adds some intrigue to this is that Janelle has always been the fan favorite. She was the one people rooted for, the one who seemed grounded, the one who looked like she could see through Kody's nonsense. So, it's been kind of surprising to watch viewers flip on her. But honestly, when you look deeper at her choices this season, you can see why it's happening. So here's where, really, things start to stack up. The shift in how people talk about Janelle didn't come out of nowhere. It's tied to all of these little moments that finally clicked into place for viewers. And honestly, once you see the pattern, it's hard to unsee. A lot of fans are bringing up the times when Janelle would privately vent about Kody's decisions, especially when he'd completely ignore the older kids or push some new rule that made no sense. She would talk about how unreasonable he was, how disconnected he'd become, how hurt the kids were. She'd even tear up, and viewers felt for her. It looked like she was the one person willing to say what everyone else was thinking. But then, within the same episode, she'd soften the edges when talking to him. She'd downplay everything she just said. She'd shift into this gentle, almost diplomatic tone like she was scared to push back too hard. And that's where fans felt misled, because it made her look like she was agreeing with Kody in real time while disagreeing with him behind the scenes. It's the classic, I'm on your side, but also I'm not dynamic that drives people crazy. The moment that keeps getting brought up is the infamous backyard argument. Everyone remembers it. Janelle was furious. She was calling Kody out. She was finally saying things people had waited years to hear from her. But then, afterward, she turned around and talked about wanting to stay neutral for the sake of peace. And that's when viewers started getting whiplash. If you are going to call someone out, great, but don't walk it back the second. They raise their voice. Fans aren't mad that she wants harmony. They're mad that she keeps saying she wants harmony, while quietly feeding the same dynamics that created the chaos in the first place. And the truth is, she has always been that way. Even way back in the early seasons, Janelle would act overwhelmed by the tension, but never actually take a stand against the person causing most of it. She didn't want to upset Kody, but she also didn't want to be seen as agreeing with him, so she'd ride that middle line that made everything more confusing. People are pointing out how often she has said things like, "I just want everyone to get along," right after telling Christine or Mary, something that completely contradicts what she later says to Kody. Fans feel like she is playing the mediator while also quietly adding fuel to both sides. Not on purpose, but because she refuses to fully commit to one truth. And the new season hasn't helped. Every time she talks about wanting strength, And independence, she drops some comment that makes her look like she is still waiting for Kody to come around. She'll talk about building a life of her own, then turn around and say something like she hopes he'll eventually understand her perspective. It is that soft backtracking that has people saying she wants empowerment without taking the full leap. What really kicked the conversation into overdrive was when people online started stitching together clips from different seasons. Someone on TikTok posted a side-by-side comparison of Janelle saying one thing in a confessional and then doing the exact opposite in a group conversation. And of course, that went viral in about 5 minutes. Suddenly everyone was like, wait, has she been doing this the whole time? That is when the term two-faced started getting tossed around more. Not in a cruel way, but in a, this is contradictory, and we've been ignoring it for years way. Fans realized that Janelle's pattern wasn't a one-off. It was a full-blown style, friendly, calm, and thoughtful on camera, but quietly sliding into whatever role kept the peace in the moment, even if that meant undermining her own words. People started to peg how often she'd reassure Christine privately, then get in front of the full family and shift tone the second Kody was present. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was enough to create confusion. She'd say she understood why Christine needed to leave, then later say she hoped the family could all heal together, as if she wasn't fully standing behind that decision. And viewers began to question if she actually supported Christine, or if she just didn't want to be the one taking any heat. Another thing people keep bringing up is how she talks about her relationship with Kody in this careful, almost sanitized way. She'll admit he has been difficult, that he withdrew, that he created distance, but she never fully says what everyone else is saying. She circles the truth rather than stepping right into it. And that kind of half-truth tone has made people wonder if she is still protecting him even when she says she is done. What really made the backlash loud this time, though, is how the show edited her recent scenes. You can tell production is leaning into this voice of reason angle hard. They frame her as the calm counterbalance, the adult in the room, the steady presence. But viewers aren't buying it anymore because they've seen too many moments where she quietly agrees with something questionable just to avoid tension. And you know how viewers get when they feel like someone is playing to the cameras. Once they sense it, they don't unsee it. Comments were full of people saying stuff like, she wants to look like the stable one, but half her actions don't match her words. Or, she only stands up to Kody when she feels safe, then backs down the second he challenges her. People weren't being subtle. What is interesting, though, is this isn't typical backlash. It is not about one thing dramatic she did. It is about viewers finally zooming out and seeing the bigger picture. And that is always when fan opinion shifts hardest, not from one explosive moment, but from realizing the pattern isn't changing. And honestly, some people think the only reason this is blowing up now is because production can't hide it anymore. When you hit this many seasons, the little inconsistencies start stacking up, of course. The turning point came when fans started calling out the exact scenes where Janelle's words and actions didn't line up. It wasn't just a couple of comments anymore. Entire threads were popping up with people comparing notes, almost like they were solving a mystery together. And honestly, that is when things got messy for her. Once viewers start building a case collectively, it is hard for anyone to escape that momentum. A lot of people pointed to how she handled the conversations about the family rift. She'd talk about wanting everyone to move forward, which sounds reasonable, but then she'd slip in remarks that seemed to minimize the pain Christine went through. It wasn't blatant, but it was enough for fans to feel like she was quietly invalidating Christine while telling her she understood her decision. And that is exactly the kind of mixed messaging people have been reacting to. There was the conversation she had with Kody, where she let him rant about the older kids again. He brought up the same grievances, the same frustrations, their ungrateful routine he always goes back to. And instead of pushing back, instead of holding him accountable, the way she often does privately, she softened everything. She nodded along, she diffused, she redirected. But she didn't challenge him, not even once. To viewers, that was the moment she lost a lot of credibility. People were commenting things like, she says she is strong, but she folds whenever Kody starts talking, and she plays tough in confessionals, then turns into a peacemaker the second Kody opens his mouth. The frustration wasn't that she wanted peace, it was that she kept saying one thing to the audience and another thing to him. That gap is what people started calling two-faced. And here's the thing. Fans will overlook flaws. They'll even defend their favorites through some pretty questionable choices. But they don't like feeling misled, and they definitely don't like it when someone tries to play both sides. Once it clicked that Janelle has been straddling the line for years, people felt like they had been watching a version of her that wasn't telling the full truth. Some viewers argued that she's afraid of Kody's reactions, that she freezes the minute conflict shows up. Others said she wants to maintain a good relationship with him for the sake of her younger kids, which is understandable. But then the other half of the audience was like, if that's the case, just say that, don't preach independence while quietly tiptoeing around him, and that's what's fueling the backlash. Not that she's imperfect, but that she's inconsistent in ways that feel calculated, even if they aren't intentional. Another big point fans keep bringing up is that she often positions herself as the lone adult who sees through everyone's emotions. She'll say things like she's the one trying to keep things balanced, or that she's the one not letting drama take over. But viewers have noticed that she's actually very involved in the drama, just in a quieter way that's harder to notice at first. And honestly, once viewers started naming it, everyone else jumped on board. It's the classic domino effect. One person points out the pattern, another agrees, and suddenly everyone's realizing they've been seeing the same thing for years without putting a name to it. What really pushed the conversation over the edge was a scene that should have been simple. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling. No big emotional showdown. Just a quiet, normal moment. And that's exactly why it made such an impact. It was the scene where Janelle sat with Christine, talking about how she fully supported her leaving Kody. She was calm, reassuring, and thoughtful. She said all the right things, she validated Christine, listed reasons she understood the decision, and fans loved it. It felt mature. It felt honest. But then later, in a separate conversation with Kody, she didn't stick to any of that. She softened it. She reworded it. She framed Christine's choice as something everyone was still adjusting to. She even implied the split had happened too fast for the family to catch up emotionally. She didn't say she supported Christine outright. Instead, she acted like she was neutral, and viewers spotted the difference immediately. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was subtle. It felt like she was shaping her comments to fit whoever she was talking to. Fans hate that. They want consistency. They want someone to stand in the same truth no matter who is in the room. That was the moment people started saying they felt played. Like she was performing strength and independence for the camera, but pulling back when it actually mattered. A lot of viewers also pointed out how differently she speaks in her confessionals. In private interviews, she'll say she is frustrated. She'll say she is tired. She'll say she is done with Kody's behavior. But then in the group scenes, she rarely matches that energy. She gets quieter, more cautious, more agreeable. Some fans started saying things like, she is brave only when she is talking to the producers, and she is a lion in the confessionals and a mouse in the actual conversations. It sounds harsh, but people weren't trying to be cruel. They were trying to make sense of why her words kept splitting in two depending on the setting. Another big discussion erupted around her relationship with Kody. Viewers have watched him dismiss her concerns, cut her off, talk over her, and barely prioritize her for several seasons now. So when she talks about being independent and self-reliant, but then makes choices that keep her tied to him emotionally, fans feel confused. They can't tell if she is strong or stuck. An inconsistency like that is an easy target for criticism. But here is the interesting part. The backlash didn't start from a place of dislike. If anything, it came from disappointment. People used to see Janelle as the rational one, the steady one, the woman who saw the bigger picture. When they realized she wasn't always being straight with the audience, that image cracked. And once the spell breaks, the mood shifts fast. Viewers became more critical. They stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. They noticed every little moment where she hesitated, every time she changed her tone, every time she watered down the truth to keep the peace. It wasn't one mistake, it was the accumulation. Years of scenes that didn't quite line up, confessionals that didn't match reactions, support that seemed conditional, strength that seemed situational. That is how the two-faced label took hold, not from one betrayal. From a slow drip of contradictions that finally became too obvious to ignore. and this is where things start getting even tougher for Janelle. Because the conversation turns from, she is inconsistent, to, why has she been doing this all along? Once viewers agreed that Janelle had a pattern of saying one thing behind the scenes and another in front of the family. People started trying to explain why. That's when a new wave of theories took over the conversation, and most of them centered on one idea. She hates conflict so much, she'll bend herself into knots to avoid it. A lot of longtime fans have always seen Janelle as the practical one. She's steady, level-headed, and not easily rattled. But now that people are rewatching older scenes with fresh eyes, they're noticing that her calmness sometimes looks less like maturity and more like self-protection. It's not just that she doesn't like fights, it's that she avoids them at all costs, even when it means silencing her own opinions. Viewers pointed out that she rarely challenges Kody face to face. Even when she does, it's careful, it's measured, it's restrained. She'll start a sentence, hesitate, then soften whatever she was about to say. It's like she edits herself in real time, and fans are beginning to think that she's been managing him, not confronting him. This became more obvious when people compared her interactions with Christine to her interactions with Kody. With Christine, she's direct and open. She'll talk honestly about what's wrong, what's frustrating, what needs to change. But with Kody, she shrinks her opinions or tucks them into vague statements to keep the peace. It's like she has two communication modes: real honesty with the women and careful diplomacy with him. And once viewers started connecting those dots, they realized how much of her easygoing personality might have been shaped by fear of rocking the boat. That makes the story more complicated. People aren't just annoyed by her contradiction anymore. They're wondering how much of her true self she's been hiding for years, just to survive the family dynamic. Another theory that took off online is that she learned early on that pushing back against Kody didn't lead anywhere good. Fans brought up past scenes where Kody dismissed her concerns without even listening. Moments he dismissed her while his attention turned to one of the other wives. Times when he seemed completely disinterested in her needs, unless they coincided with what he wanted. Viewers started wondering if Janelle backed down so often because she never got anything out of standing up for herself. But this is exactly where the criticism deepens, because even if that explanation makes sense, fans still feel like she presents herself as stronger than she's been acting. They're struggling with the gap between how she talks and how she behaves, and that's why the backlash keeps growing. People feel like she hasn't been honest about her own vulnerability. The conversation shifted again when fans started talking about how Janelle likes to stay neutral. She often positions herself as the one who doesn't take sides. But the more viewers discuss it, the more they realize that neutral usually means she agrees with the person she's currently talking to. That makes her neutrality feel less like balance and more like avoidance dressed up as wisdom. And of course, once this idea spread, fans went looking for more examples. They found plenty. Moments where she'd encourage Christine to stand strong, then tell producers she hoped no one would make big changes. Scenes where she'd criticize Kody privately, then defend him in group settings. Conversations where she'd say she wanted independence, then immediately adjust her tone around him. Piece by piece, people felt like they had uncovered the real issue behind the two-faced label. She doesn't want to disappoint anyone. Not Kody, not the other wives, not the viewers. And when you try to please everybody, you end up looking inconsistent. This is when the commentary about her public image really intensified. Fans started talking about how her reputation as the reasonable one might not have been entirely earned. Some said they felt like they had projected that label onto her because she was quieter, not necessarily because she was more truthful. And once people start rethinking a cast member's image, it rarely stops there. Here's where things get even more interesting. Fans aren't only critiquing what they see on screen, they have begun to contemplate how production itself might be shaping these moments. After all, reality television isn't ever real, right? And the more you watch, the more you catch these subtle editing choices, strategic cuts, and how producers frame conversations to push a particular narrative. Some viewers felt that Janelle's two-faced moments are not completely her fault. Instead, they feel it is, amplified by how the show is filmed. Think about it. Confessionals versus group conversations. In confessionals, she's alone, able to speak freely, vent, or reflect honestly. But in group settings, every word is under scrutiny. Producers are watching, cameras are rolling, and tensions are high. That creates a natural incentive to soften her statements, to avoid conflicts that could blow up on camera. And the fans call this out. They said, yes, she's inconsistent, but some of it is probably just television framing. Still, here's the kicker. Viewers aren't giving her a pass entirely. Even if production plays a role, fans argue she has agency. She chooses how she reacts in the moment, and that's where the frustration builds. They're saying, you knew how this would come across. You could have been consistent. Why didn't you? Another layer that fans are exploring is how her role in the family influences her behavior. Janelle has always been the one who tries to maintain harmony. She's the mediator, the peacekeeper. That dynamic has always required compromise. And sometimes, compromise looks like saying one thing to one person and something else to another. But when fans see that pattern repeated over seasons, they interpret it as two-faced behavior rather than careful diplomacy. Fans also brought up subtle examples from past seasons that seem to reinforce this moments where she validates one wife's complaints, then downplays them in front of Kody. Times she reassures Kody privately, then expresses frustration in a confessional. The pattern is clear when you line them all up, and viewers notice that the newer season just makes those moments even more obvious because the stakes feel higher, the conflicts sharper, and the editing sharper. Some of those online theories further suggest that Janelle has learned how to navigate reality television expertly. That's right. Fans are starting to think some of her inconsistencies might actually be strategic. By softening certain opinions in group settings, she avoids conflict on camera. By venting in confessionals, she maintains credibility with the audience. The tricky part: fans aren't sure if this strategy earns her sympathy or makes her look manipulative, and that ambiguity fuels the two-faced accusations even more. There's a pretty interesting commentary on family dynamics themselves. Fans are pointing out that the show often puts Janelle in impossible situations, like trying to support one wife while placating Kody, or mediating between older and younger kids while the cameras roll. In theory, this explains some of her softer, more cautious behavior, but it also highlights the tension between her public persona as the grounded, reasonable one and her private persona, which might be more reactive or strategic. What really made the two-faced label stick was when fans started doing what they do best, compiling evidence. Twitter threads, TikToks, Reddit posts, all showing side-by-side moments of Janelle saying one thing and then doing the opposite. And when you line them up, the pattern is hard to deny. For example, viewers pointed out the scene where Janelle reassures Mary about her choices in front of Kody. She smiles and nods and says stuff like, "I understand, it's your life, and you need to follow your path." Pretty supportive, right? But then, in a later group discussion, she downplayed Mary's concerns entirely, almost brushing them off as minor disagreements. That didn't really matter. Fans immediately noticed the shift. That's the kind of moment that fuels the perception of her being two-faced, not maliciously, but inconsistently. Another comparison that blew up was her interactions with Christine. Viewers saw her being firm and empathetic in private, but the minute Kody chimed in, she softened her words. She still validated Christine, but that forcefulness, the clarity, the full support gone. Fans started to say things like, "She only acts bold when she is alone. In front of him, she folds." And once that narrative hit, it spread fast across social media. Even more subtle things caught attention. Moments when she'd express frustration in confessionals and then, in the same episode, appear calm and agreeable during family meals or discussions. People started calling this confessional bravery versus group diplomacy. And honestly, that is exactly how many fans would justify the two-faced label. It is not that she is actively deceiving anyone, it is that she is behaving in ways that seem inconsistent, depending on who is in the room. Some commenters even said, "It is like she is trying to please everybody at once, but ends up pleasing nobody completely." That is the heart of the backlash. Fans aren't angry she is careful. They are angry she projects one persona to the audience and a slightly different one to the family. And they feel like they have been watching the inconsistency for years without realizing it. Then there is the newer season that made it even more glaring. The editing focuses on her calm, reasoned exterior while at times cutting out any moments where she gives in a little, softly agreeing with Kody or softening her stance. To any fan who has been watching since the beginning, This feels like confirmation that she plays both sides, whether consciously or unconsciously. What is fascinating here, though, is how quickly this theory gained traction. It took one viral clip, and then the comment sections deluged with people posting timestamps and examples from previous seasons. Everyone started adding their own evidence, and the backlash snowballed, which is then when the narrative finally becomes impossible to avoid. It is no longer just the vocal few viewers. The majority framed her as two-faced, even if they acknowledge she is not doing so on purpose. It has become a characteristic now in the way that people view Janelle on the show. But here is the thing. While fans are picking apart her every move, some of them are sympathetic too. They get it, managing this family isn't easy. But sympathy does not eliminate frustration, particularly when patterns repeat over years, and that is why the debate around her has grown so intense. Now, let's zoom out a little and look at the bigger picture. One of the reasons Janelle's actions are under such scrutiny is the family dynamic itself. The Browns are complex, with long histories, shifting loyalties, and personalities that constantly clash. And Janelle, she is right in the middle of all of it. Fans keep pointing out that Janelle has always been the peacekeeper of the family. She tries to smooth tensions between Kody and the other wives, mediate disputes, and prevent arguments from escalating on paper. That is admirable, but when you watch closely, you see how that role often forces her into compromises that make her appear inconsistent. It is like she is balancing on a tightrope between honesty and family survival. For example, when Christine expresses frustration about Kody's behavior, Janelle might wholeheartedly support her in private, but in front of Kody she softens her stance. It is a survival mechanism, fans understand that. They see the pressure of trying to maintain harmony, and they empathize. But here is where it gets tricky. Viewers also notice that this constant balancing act makes her seem two-faced, even if she is just trying to navigate impossible family politics. Another angle that people are dissecting is Janelle's relationship with Kody himself. She has been married to him for decades, and they have a deep history. That history comes with loyalty, memories, and unspoken agreements. Fans are starting to see how this long-standing bond could influence her behavior, why she might avoid outright confrontation or soften criticisms in group settings. She is protecting the marriage to a degree while trying to honor her own principles. Meanwhile, her interactions with the younger wives, Mary and Christine, add another layer. Viewers notice she is more candid and outspoken with them, but only when she feels safe or removed from Kody's direct influence. That contrast fuels the narrative that she is being two-faced. Fans are saying she is bold when no one's going to challenge her, but cautious when she has to face Kody. It is subtle, but it adds up. And let's not forget the kids. Janelle is also navigating motherhood and step-parenting responsibilities. Fans have suggested that part of her careful diplomacy is influenced by wanting to maintain stability for her children. She doesn't want her kids caught in the crossfire of family arguments, so she tempers her words. Again, sympathetic. But it adds to the perception of inconsistency because her tone shifts depending on who's present. Lastly, fans are also talking about the editing. The producers frame her as the calm, measured voice in a room full of chaos, which puts her two-faced moments into even sharper relief. The viewers see the contrast between her confessionals and group scenes, and it exaggerates the perception that she performs a certain way in front of cameras and another in private. So by the time the current season rolls around, viewers aren't just reacting to one scene. They're reacting to decades of patterns, compounded by editing and high-pressure family dynamics. And that's why the backlash feels so strong. It's not new. It's a long time coming. The moment clips of Janelle's latest interactions hit social media, fan reaction was immediate and intense. Twitter threads were exploding, TikToks were going viral, and Reddit users were dissecting every second. People weren't just sharing opinions, they were posting screenshots, timestamps, and side-by-side comparisons, almost like they were building a case. The main argument that Janelle repeatedly presents herself as calm, supportive, and neutral, but her private interactions, or even her more subtle actions on camera, say otherwise. To evidence this, fans pointed out specific moments when she reassures one wife, nods along to Kody, or downplays someone's feelings only to express frustration in a confessional. And that, of course, is exactly the kind of thing to keep the two-faced label trending. Some of the hottest posts compared her behavior over multiple seasons. The pattern, as viewers see it, repeats over and over, and social media has been quick to call it out. One Twitter user summed it up perfectly. She is the voice of reason. Until Kody speaks. Then it is like she forgets all the wisdom she just shared. That was echoed by hundreds more, as the comment sections filled up with similar examples. It became less about isolated moments and more about decades of behavior. And it is not just casual fans. Longtime watchers and reality television commentators have joined in, arguing over whether Janelle's behavior is strategic, fear-driven, or simply human. Some say she is trying to keep peace and manage impossible dynamics. Others say she knows exactly how she comes off and uses the ambiguity to her advantage. Really fueling the discussion, though, the behavior isn't extreme or malicious. It is subtle. It is nuanced. And because it is nuanced, fans are divided. Some sympathize, while others feel misled. That tension keeps the debate alive, and every new clip seems to reignite the conversation. TikTok compilations especially drive this. Quick edits show her saying one thing in a confessional and another in front of Kody or the other wives. Within hours, these videos rack up hundreds of thousands of views. And once those comments come in, "I've noticed this too," or "Yes, she has been doing this forever," the snowball happens. Suddenly, the backlash doesn't feel contained to a few very vocal fans. It feels like a consensus. On Reddit, threads add another layer as people analyze her patterns season to season. She has had fans map how her statements evolve depending on who she is talking to. There are even charts. It might sound obsessive, but it really reveals how much people care about her perceived authenticity. They like her. They root for her. But they're frustrated with the way she navigates these relationships. And that mix of admiration and irritation makes for the perfect storm of backlash. Now, let's delve a little deeper as to why this is so frustrating for viewers. A lot of fans admit that Janelle's intentions seem genuine. She wants peace, stability, and to maintain relationships across the family. She's not actively malicious, and she's certainly not out to sabotage anyone. In fact, most would agree she's trying to protect everyone, including herself. But here's the problem. Intention doesn't always match perception. And in reality, television, perception is everything. When viewers see her softening statements in front of Kody, then being more assertive in confessionals or private conversations, it creates a gap between what they believe she stands for and what she actually does. That's the exact moment when the two-faced narrative takes hold. Psychology plays a part here, too. Fans are speculating that Janelle's behavior might stem from conflict avoidance and long-term conditioning. Think about it. Decades in a high-pressure polygamous family, constantly mediating disputes, dealing with emotional manipulation, and having to keep the family functioning. Over time, it makes sense she developed a careful style of communication. One which protects her from emotional fallout, but sometimes comes across as inconsistent. Viewers notice this in small moments, the subtle nods, the softened tone, the way she phrases support to avoid triggering a confrontation. They pick up on patterns. She's assertive when safe, cautious when stakes are high, and fans are saying, "Yes, she's thoughtful, but it makes her appear too faced because she changes based on the audience in the room." Then there's the factor of emotional labor. Janelle carries a lot of responsibility for maintaining family cohesion. Fans understand this is exhausting, and they sympathize. But exhaustion doesn't make inconsistencies disappear, it magnifies them. In the main, watching her try to manage multiple perspectives while the cameras are rolling, fans can see why she sometimes appears contradictory. Still, they're frustrated. This is the one they've always seen as the strong, reasonable figure, and now that image feels compromised. It gets messier when you layer in production. Reality television amplifies these inconsistencies by choosing how to cut scenes, when to juxtapose confessionals with group interactions, and which moments to highlight. Fans aren't blind to that. They notice the editorial choices, and some think Janelle might even play into it subconsciously, knowing that confessionals give her space to vent while group scenes require caution. So the backlash is multidimensional. It's not just about one scene or one statement. It's about decades of behavior, psychological patterns, family dynamics, and production framing all colliding into a single narrative. Janelle appears two-faced, And while many fans still like her, they're now hyper, aware of the contradictions that were once easy to overlook. By now, it is clear why Janelle Brown's portrayal has divided the fans. The two-faced label didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew from years of patterns layered with high-pressure family dynamics, subtle production influence, and viewers finally connecting the dots. What may have once been seen as careful diplomacy or a desire to keep the peace has become a defining point of criticism in the current season. Fans continue to debate whether she's deliberately strategic, subconsciously cautious, or simply navigating an impossible environment the best way she can. Some say she's the glue holding the family together, while others argue her attempts at neutrality have backfired, leaving her reputation as inconsistent. And that tension keeps the discussion alive. Social media threads, TikToks, and Reddit posts show that people are not only analyzing each of her moves, looking for that split between words and actions, but calling it out. Even though the backlash is tremendous, it's critical to keep in mind the nuance. Janelle's not malicious, and many viewers still sympathize with her position. She's managing decades of family relationships under the constant camera gaze, which is no small feat. But on reality television, perception often far outweighs intention. And in Janelle's case, the perception of being two-faced managed to eclipse her intentions, at least for now, of harmony and protection of the family. The fans seem to take away the lesson of consistency and transparency. They want someone who speaks the same truth regardless of who's in the room or what the cameras are capturing. Janelle's story puts into sharp focus just how hard that can be in a polygamous family dynamic shaped by power imbalances and the added element of reality television pressures. So while the backlash continues and debates rage on social media platforms, Janelle is still right at the center of this narrative. Fans will continue to dissect her behavior, praising her moments of strength, criticizing her inconsistencies, and speculating how much of what they see is strategy, caution, or survival. And that ongoing discussion, that's exactly what keeps shows like Sister Wives relevant and keeps viewers coming back for more. Thanks so much for following along with this deep dive. If you've been keeping up with Janelle and the Brown family for years, you know just how layered their dynamics are. Now, though, with this new lens on her behavior, it's impossible to see her the same way again. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you never miss out on a breakdown like this. Bye, besties.